Very, very recently, we've obviously had the deadline pass for Britain to give France the fishing license, and of course, no agreement was reached. Um, that will probably be another upcoming event this week that we will probably end up having to talk about, because I'm sure there will be repercussions on this. Because as Britain was hoping maybe to try and isolate France from maybe the rest of the EU, all the rest of the EU pretty much unilaterally agreed. No, Britain, you agreed this in the Brexit withdrawal agreement. You need to give France what is owed. And as a result, Boris again eventually ended up last week turning down the heat on this very simmering away bubble. But there has been constant news and talk, because here's the thing: a lot of the very, very hardcore Brexiteers are desperate for a trade war with the EU. They think that somehow, if they can get into a trade war with the EU, not only will this force the UK to then start trading with other countries, thus reducing the UK's reliance on the EU as a central market, that somehow that will all be fine, that will work out well. No, that will not end well. And yet that is what many of the hardcore Brexiteers currently in the Conservative Party are absolutely desperate for. So we have to ask a serious question: how likely is there for a trade war between the UK and the EU? Needless to say, it's a serious question that we have to ask, because this will have huge impacts on the UK and probably barely affect the EU. Let's face it, it's the larger market. And in trade wars, the larger market tends to win. So, as always, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So, on with the article. This comes from the journal.ie with the title of "It Won't Resolve Anything. How likely is a post-Brexit trade war between the UK and the EU?" In 1932, the NI response to the newly installed Fianna Fáil government's refusal to continue paying annuities to loans given to Irish farmers in the 19th century, and the then British government put a tax on Irish imports to Britain. Eamon de Valera, the government responded to this by hitting British imports to Ireland with tariffs, kickstarting an economic war between the two countries. The trade war would last until 1938 and would hit Ireland a lot harder than the UK. In the end, despite the Irish government's eventually winning a reduction in the amount that they had to pay the British, the economic war would damage the Irish economy, particularly larger farmers, whom Great Britain was their main export market. Today, almost 90 years later, there has been talk of yet another trade war involving the United Kingdom and Ireland. But this time, Ireland is part of the larger adversary in the form of the wider European Union. The dispute centres, of course, around the Brexit withdrawal agreement, which came into effect this year after the UK voted to leave the EU in 2016. The issue of contention relates to Northern Ireland, and whether or not the UK government will suspend key parts of the withdrawal agreement, which experts say will trigger a response not only from the EU, but which in turn could start a trade war. But does either side actually want a trade war? How likely is it to happen? And what would a trade war actually look like? And how would it affect Ireland? After the UK voted to leave the EU in 2016, years of negotiations took place, both between the EU and the UK, and domestically within the UK itself, before Brexit actually finally happened in January of 2020. A transition period during which nothing changed was in place until the 31st of December last year, before the Trade and Cooperation Agreement came into force, which handles the post-Brexit relationship between the UK and the EU. Of course, during the negotiations, two sides, the one main sticking point was how trade would be handled with Northern Ireland, which is formally part of the UK, but also on the island of Ireland. Both sides stressed that they needed to avoid a hard border on the island in order to protect the Good Friday Agreement and prevent a return to conflict. However, they disagreed on how to actually achieve this goal. Eventually, an agreement was reached when the Protocol on Northern Ireland and the Protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland, known as the Northern Ireland Protocol, was signed in 2019. Under the protocol, Northern Ireland effectively remains in the EU's customs union and the single market for goods. Northern Ireland still adheres to EU standards, so it is allowed to trade freely with Ireland and the rest of the EU. However, because the UK has left the EU, checks must now be placed on goods coming to the north from England, Scotland, and Wales, and such this has led to claims that the border has essentially been moved to the Irish Sea, angering unionists. Since this has come into force, the UK government and unionist parties in Northern Ireland have had expressed serious misgivings about the protocol. The UK's Brexit chief negotiator David Frost said back in May that the protocol is presenting significant challenges for many in Northern Ireland. The DUP has even called for it to be scrapped, while businesses in Northern Ireland have said that the elements are working, but the protocol is also causing them problems. The EU has subsequently proposed changes in October, which it said would result in at least 80% of reductions in checks for retail aggregates and products arriving in the north from the rest of Britain. However, the UK wants further concessions and last month was threatening to trigger Article 16 of the protocol, which would suspend elements of it entirely. This move has been seen as highly aggressive by the EU and would likely result in retaliation, which has been speculated could lead to an eventual trade war between both sides. So, according to Egner Morlov, professor of economics at the DUC Business School, the European Union would respond very robustly if the UK were to do this. They may not trigger Article 16 at all because ultimately I think the message has come through that the EU would respond very robustly. So that's where we're going to get into a trade war situation, he said. From there, he sees the main three options from the EU could do in response. The easy option is for countries with countries though could be with a lot of UK trade goods to simply start controlling UK lorries very vigorously, he said. You would again get essentially a situation there without anything actually having been imposed, anything trade kind of comes to a halt. The second option would be for the EU to pick out very specific products and target them with tariffs, which would affect different parts of the UK society. The third option, Molgov said, would be for the EU to just go all out and say, well, we're now trading on WTO terms and rules, and that kicks all sorts of tariffs in. This means that tariffs on a huge range of UK products would be the most aggressive of options on the table. The UK would have similar options it could take in response to any of these EU actions. So how would the impact be on Ireland? If the situation were to develop where for tit for tats were placed on products, it would hit businesses across the EU and the UK. And Professor McAuliffe said the UK would be in a far worse position if a trade war were to take place, given the significantly smaller economy than the EU as a whole. However, due to the close proximity and the trading relationship between Ireland and the UK, a trade war would likely hit Ireland the hardest out of all the EU countries. The fact that we trade more with the UK than other EU countries means that whatever happens, if there is a trade war, we will be affected. He said that the UK could put pressure on by starting to inspect goods more thoroughly than they had before. If they simply went and started inspecting things more thoroughly, creating havoc, that way Ireland could be particularly hard hit because we have a substantial amount of transit traffic through to the UK that could hurt us that way, he said. Just simply delaying stuff because a lot of perishables are still going through the UK doesn't go to the direct route because of speed advantages. And according to McDonnell, the CEO of the Irish Small and Medium Enterprise Association, Ireland is very closely aligned with the UK in terms of products, and a trade war would damage the economy here. A trade war is going to resolve nothing, he said. And there is always a price to be paid on the domestic side. People are always thinking, oh, well, we'll screw you with tariffs, but tariffs hurt your own importers. McDonnell said it would be very difficult for Irish importers to try and change suppliers from UK-based companies to EU ones, considering how close the nations are aligned. So customers taste stuff, you look at everything that's on your cupboard, your breakfast stuff, in your food, in clothing, consumer goods. We know, even down to our power sockets, there's the 3-pin or 240-volt stuff. All that stuff we've got in common with the UK, and it's very difficult to change that by going to France, Spanish, or even German supplier. It's a very tough ask. It's very easy for the Department of Enterprise to say, change your supplier. But if you're actually on the ground trying to do this stuff, it's a far lot harder to do. So how likely, of course, is a trade war? Last month, the UK government seemed to be on the cusp of triggering Article 16, and the Irish and EU official politicians were very much on high alert. The foreign ministers, Minister Simon Covey, told RTE News this week on the 7th of November that the UK looks set to do so. He said that whether this was part of an ongoing negotiating strategy or to try and change or amend or even end the protocol is hard to know, but certainly the signals are not good. However, since then, the rhetoric from the UK has been significantly dialed down. The UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson faces a number of domestic issues, including allegations of Tory sleaze, and recent allegations of the Downing Street Christmas party have taken place last year amid the COVID-19 restrictions. The professor said he didn't expect the UK to trigger Article 16 anytime soon. I didn't expect it, and I don't expect the UK to trigger Article 16 this side of Christmas, if they were ever going to, he said. It risks disrupting Christmas supplies even more than Brexit has already done. Morgan said that economically, the EU is stronger than the UK, and that the UK would not be able to dictate trading terms in the future for this reason. At the end of the day, the EU is strong and it holds all the cards here. The UK needs to get used to that fact and that they're the junior partner in this, he said. They're not going to dictate terms to the EU. They're very small in comparison. So Neil McDonald also agrees, saying that the UK will be very worse off in any trade conflict. Nobody obviously wants to see this sort of trade conflict between Ireland and the EU, he said. However, I would say this, if there is any kind of future trade battle, it won't be like Dev and Amenities in the 30s. On this occasion, it will be far worse for the UK than it would be for the EU. Though I do appreciate it will be very tough for Irish businesses. So how is it going to be on our side? What has happened? Well, of course, we've had all these scandals very much recently, and there was no way Boris Johnson was going to trigger Article 16, even if these scandals never happened. Like, if they didn't happen, like they never happened at all, Article 16 would not be triggered. Boris Johnson is desperate this year for a quiet Christmas. Now, could he have triggered it after? Potentially. But remember, Boris Johnson is in arguably the most weakest position he has ever been in. And as we discussed just yesterday, Boris Johnson could very easily find himself in the same position Theresa May found herself after the 2017 election. But in a far bizarre, more stranger one, a winner who's won a massive majority but has no power over the party that he now controls. Again, could be very strange times ahead, but the likelihood of this happening is very slim. But there are some very extreme Brexit ultras who are desperate for this trade war to actually happen. And Frost is among one of them, unfortunately. So that's why he's been very, very gun-ho, constantly mentioning, oh, we're going to trigger Article 16. Oh, we're going to trigger Article 16. But of course, we've had the US remove tariffs, the Trump-era tariffs for the EU, but not the UK, basically saying, sort out the Northern Ireland Protocol, stop making threats, stop being silly, which again did not go down well, of course, for the Brexiteers. They were very, very much banking and, of course, very much talking up the goal of having a UK-US trade deal, which would supposedly be the savior of Brexit. It was their big win, but of course, that never happened. So, as always, we've got to keep an eye on this to see how this situation develops. And of course, any trade war that happens will be incredibly, incredibly bad for the UK. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that likes and share button down below. And of course, there is my Patreon page and the One Off Nation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching.